Hello again, David. This is our 10th episode, I believe, of No Art, No Life.
No
Grant,
art, no life. Well, I think that we live that little motto, don't we?
I think we do.
I think that most of the time we're involved in art. Um, you're practicing probably the piano on some level.
hmm
I know that I've had a fairly good week of practicing.
Okay. What pieces?
Scriabin Etude. I'm
Okay.
learning the notes of the C sharp minor, Opus 42, number 5, the one Horowitz plays so much better than anyone, and I'm loving practicing it.
hmm
And my only fear is that I get a certain level with it and I stop. I go on to another piece. You
hmm
know that we've talked about
Yes.
that before. That it is one of my problems as a pianist. Instead of going, and doing it and learning it, I'm always stopping and going to something else that is more attractive that moment
Mm.
because I don't want to do what? What do I not want to do? I don't want to do another repetition
hmm
of it. Repetition, I think, is the bugaboo of an artist. And yet, if you're a pianist, as you know, you have to play it as many times as necessary.
hmm
And it could be 1,000 times. And what are you going to do in that 1,000th time? You're going to go out of your mind with hatred for it?
hmm
So,
Well, I remember in one of our conversations, I had asked you, because you know Horowitz so well, how it was he escaped that problem. And you, I think, suggested that in a way with his facility, maybe to a degree, he avoided anything that demanded that he would have to engage with that kind of
yes, yes.
repetition.
You could watch Horowitz and understand that this would drive the artist in him crazy.
hmm
And he always was looking for a new way of playing it. He really was a composer, not a
Mm.
pianist. He always said that that was true, and I always felt that that was not at all true because he would have composed. That
Mhm.
drive to create would have been in him. But I also realized that the drive to create within him was an imitative thing as well.
Mm.
He would just be writing other Rachmaninoff pieces or other pieces of romanticism. At the most, he would, use a Poulenc harmony.
Mm.
So, he was caught in the web.
hmm
Rubinstein, Arau, other people didn't have to be caught in the web because they did not have to um, compose at all. That
By,
had disappeared.
by the web, you mean?
The web meaning you're just caught like a fly. I mean, how do you keep going for 50 years playing the same Beethoven sonata
hmm
and making it fresh? Yes, these are very unusual people, and they, I think, did a great job. But the average person who's very, very good and very professional, well, they're not going to want to do this their whole lives and continue practicing that same piece. And yet they're plagued to it. They can't escape. They have to have it. It has to be part of their repertoire if they're professional musicians making a living.
hmm
We haven't talked about the terrible fact that artists have to make a living. This is probably the most scandalous thing of all things that the artist can have to do for himself.
Well, that's one of the things you brought up last week. I was thinking about this week. You had mentioned that you thought ultimately, over time, Wagner's work might be doomed to remain in the canon because the ultimate underlying motivation was commerce that you felt in terms of versus because we were comparing it to the body of work of Liszt, where I think arguably Liszt's work certainly wasn't conceived with the idea of commerce being the boon, but we might imagine that with the production levels of opera and its popularity it would. But do you feel strongly about that, that there's an underlying poison in the motivation, however grand or inspired the abstract element of the music may be, that Wagner created, that it's still poisoned by that commerce element?
Poisoned by commerce.
Mm-hmm.
It's poisoned by the bourgeois attitude of money, of Bayreuth, of building and caring and maintenance on the literally on the town.
Mm.
He had to have a city, a little city,
Mm-hmm.
to promote this, glorious work of the Nibelungen tetralogy. And so what happens is that all of his descendants are just businessmen.
Mm.
Weiland Wagner, or even, of course, Cosima. That was her main issue, was get this next festival going.
Mm-hmm.
And they pretended in their minds that it was, of course, for art, because they truly loved the work. And at that time, Wagner's music was considered the ultimate in music. Have no idea why that happened. Certainly Liszt played a part in that. That was a little loathsome to me. If I were Liszt's Wagner's friend, and I was Franz Liszt, I would say, well, Ricky, I think that you should start thinking about writing a 10th symphony or a 12th symphony, because all of this stuff is just literary material that you've put up with an idea of it's going to be dated very quickly. Because it's just a retelling of the old myths that everyone knows, and now they're very boring, and who cares about Wotan and Brunhild and all of that. So I think that the cast of characters is also limited. Of course, I do understand it's theater, but I don't like theater, basically, when it comes to purity. I mean, there's a few plays I've watched, and only Shakespeare has any meaning to me at all. And one or two things by Marlowe,
Okay.
who had been cut down by the sword at 28 years old in a tavern, say his contemporary. But no, I'm not into the idea of, and of course these are all limitations of my own, but I'm not. I'm not interested in hearing Tristan for 5 hours. I once did it, and I had, a little smoke, as they say, and I was happy to, get through the thing on a little high. And the only thing I was obsessed with, I had a great seat, was that all I saw was all of this horrible spit on the stage, because of course these are highly pronounced German words, and instead of the music and the waiting for, and why am I waiting always for the Liebestod, the love death? Wagner is I'm sure a great composer, but no longer do I care for him in any way. All of the music seems the same rhythmical throb. The man called the Shakespeare of music, Verdi, who nobody thought was any good because Wagner had the great press agentry behind him. No man has ever had in the arts anything like the press agentry of the Wagnerian tribe and family. So in the sense of Verdi, he was just, one of those small-time little Italian theater composer. What today, he's outperforming Wagner, if you looked at the statistics.
Okay.
And his two great last operas, I certainly think that Otello is as great as anything that Wagner did. I think it's the greater piece in some ways than Wagner's late work, because Parsifal is just tinged with a smear of that kind of Wagnerian kitsch almost. It's kitschy. He's a little kitschy.
I see.
He's not what they used to say he was. The greatest thing ever going. I hope that you're not upset with me, anyone, because I may change my mind tomorrow.
Well, that's okay, because the topic of turning on a subject, or in other words, turning on or against a subject, is what I was thinking about last week after our conversation last week. We had somehow moved toward Napoleon to a degree, and you made some very interesting generalizations about Napoleon, and I then had us revert to the fact that Napoleon was one of Emerson's representative men in his book Representative Men, and you had mentioned how you wrestle with reading Emerson. And one thing that's interesting in the book representative men is that he will seem to favor a topic or a man and then turn on that subject, meaning not betray him, but
No,
all
I
of a sudden.
understand very well. Yes, yes.
So that then made me think.
I'm doing that with Wagner because he was
Mhm.
he was the height of everyone. I was like maybe the last generation where you just had to be playing Wagner on the piano every hour.
Okay, so then that made me think of literary studies, biographical, tight literary essays that do that kind of turning on their subject. And I thought of Deems Taylor's The Monster. Now, it doesn't really address Wagner's music so much as the perhaps hacky notion of his behavior and how people would be willing to tolerate that behavior because they so admired the man. And that then made me think that there's no one better, though don't think we can hardly equate the behavior of a Horowitz with the reproachable behavior of a Wagner, but it's interesting in terms of what your personal experience may have with Horowitz, because I then thought of your book, Evenings with Horowitz, which in a sense reads like a novel that then eventually has to weigh the personal behavior versus the exalted behavior of the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does, I think, stand as the two things that I know that really address that best. There's Deems Taylor's The Monster, where he gives this tremendous list of execrable behavior that Wagner makes people submit to. And then at the end, and then in a wonderful line, there's a paragraph break, and then he suddenly says, "And yet none of this matters." And then he cites the glories of the artist. And what I think is really fascinating about your Evenings with Horowitz is that, to a degree, you certainly exalt the artist that Horowitz is, but it weighs that idea in a different way, that we may have to exalt the artist, but the individual that has to deal with that person doesn't necessarily have to tolerate the intolerable from that person.
Yes.
And that's why I think your book reads like a novel in that respect.
Yes.
So I wanted to hear what you might say in terms of the Wagner-Horowitz comparison. And then to add on to it, how on earth could someone like a Hans von Bülow tolerate as much as they did
Yes.
from a Wagner? So if you would be willing to
Wow.
weigh those comparisons.
Wow. I mean, your discussion on it is certainly, if just as valuable as what I may say about it. That's for certain. I never read this monster list.
Deems Taylor's
Yes.
about Wagner.
Yes. And then, of course, you notice at the end he said it didn't matter because once again Wagner got away with it, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he didn't get away with it with me. I don't consider him the composer. Verdi is even,
Mm-hmm.
and Verdi is high. He's the greatest Italian, composer of opera. No, we don't know of someone composing other.
Well, why did
music.
Wagner get away with it then?
Yeah, it's very important.
Mhm.
Why did he? Because he culminates at the very last stage, where commerce does indeed take over. It's so much easier to say, I'm going to go on a nice trip to Bayreuth.
Mhm.
I'm going to see Liszt in the audience, and Hermann Levy is going to conduct, and all of the other stars of the world are there, and it's the most highly publicized event in the world, and I'm just loving that status. I want to be part of it, and my name is Tchaikovsky, and somehow I got a ticket there, and although I'm not a great Wagnerian, Tchaikovsky would say, I certainly want to be where the action is, and there was once again not too much action compared to there was no war going on of any. The Franco-Prussian War was over, and the world was waiting for World War I to happen, which would be from, Wagner dies in 1883. At only age 70 as a heart attack, and it was amazing. The whole world stood on their head. This man was the reason, as Alan Bloom said, for life. They waited for the next opera. Well, there was not going to be another opera. There had to be some star composer who would culminate the commerce of the 19th century. You know, Puccini would certainly outdo the money making of Wagner, and you can get away with not putting Tristan on your roster in a opera season, but you're not going to get away with not putting a Puccini work on. You've got to have one or two there, or your opera house will fail.
Mm-hmm.
So as opera is starting to fail, Wagner becomes a superstar. Never had women been so attracted to music as they had Tristan and Isolde in Paris. You had Augusta Holmes, and you had other women that he himself just loved, and that he got away with everything. Mrs. Wagner, Cosima, would invite them so he could look at them.
Mm-hmm.
They would come from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Never in history has a man been so idolized. An absolute ugly little fiend.
Mm.
You know, he's only 5'2".
Mm-hmm.
He's bow-legged as hell.
Mm-hmm.
He's not good to look at.
Mm-hmm.
He's not happy with his Jewish nose because he hates Jews.
Mm-hmm.
So he says he had a Jewish nose and so forth, which of course that's so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a Jewish nose somewhere in their
Mm-hmm.
genetic
Mm-hmm.
being. So the fact is that all of this is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great topic. How did a little stupefying creature who just whip you?
Mm-hmm.
You get me my, you get me my my underwear, which is lined with fur.
Mm-hmm.
You do this for me. You do that. How did he get away with that? Because he wrote the Liebestod.
Well, that's
Yes, I think that the Siegfried's funeral march is done. I think there's a lot of but there's so much dross. I don't know why. I am not a Wagnerian anymore.
Well, if I may risk the further comparison again, going back to Evenings with Horowitz as a book, do you feel that your knowledge of the obsequious behavior that you knew from your reading that people would pay to someone like a Wagner made you cautious from the beginning with Horowitz? Because the book reads from episode to episode with really creditable gestures that you make, where you resist the demands of the lore from the very beginning, meaning that we know that presumably, what was it, Mrs. Horowitz that demanded that all gentlemen have a tie in his presence?
Right.
And yet your first episode of meeting him, you resolve that you're not going to wear a tie.
Right, and I even have an artistic reason. I'm not interested in his kind of playing anymore at this moment. I like draftsmen, I don't like colorists.
Okay.
But that was not the true reason. The true reason is that I am not going to do what he wants because I was taught never, this is a very, very great thing to be taught, never to put anyone's head higher than my own.
Mm.
He may be a greater pianist than I am, but that's another category of his life and everyone else. That's a public thing as well, and that's his own life. But and he had a hard time with it, as all pianists do. He didn't have a great life because he was a pianist of great talent. I don't use the word genius for performers much. He was awfully vulgar at times. Depends on a certain day when I will hear certain words. Oh God! Oh my God! Volodya, don't do that! Don't do that! It's just too vulgar. And then there are these other things that are on record forever. But I am not going to let him get away with what he's trying to get away with, including her. Who in the hell are they to think that I will come to a party the way they want me to without someone else? I believe that was the idea. And no, their head was never higher than mine. I'm already tired, and I'm bored with them. Who in the hell is he?
Right.
He's not that interesting, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm far more interesting in my opinion, and I think he understood that too. So, I mean, we're talking really nonsensically because, I'm saying, oh, yes, of course, when I left him, I got letters. How could you, David Duval, and nobody leave the great master? Very easily.
Oh, in
I was-
reaction to reading the book, do you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yes. How could I dare do that?
Well, that's remarkable. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. I said, my goodness, I was so tired. I'm
Mhm.
working at Juilliard 8 hours a day.
Mhm.
I'm working at WNC, and I'm working to keep Horowitz happy. I'm practicing. I'm going to Korea 5 times in one
Mhm.
year. Things like that.
Hmm.
So I was really tired, and he was not really intellectually. I would make him by the end of the evening more interesting than he was.
Hmm.
Is this outside of the law of graciousness? No, I don't think that when I left, he could captivate me any longer.
Mm.
He certainly needed to be far more beautiful than he was,
Hmm.
you see.
Do you think then, because I think you know the lore around Wagner better than I do, and many, are there people who struck that balance that you did with Horowitz in the 19th century with Wagner, meaning that they were able to stay in that person's life and yet not put Wagner's head above theirs, and yet Wagner still permit them in the circle?
Yeah.
And who would that
Wagner
be?
permitted Nietzsche in the circle for a certain time
Hmm.
until he, got a little bit outside the mode and wrote poorly about him.
Mm.
Especially in the book, in the case of Wagner. Nietzsche was a composer himself. Nietzsche was a great thinker on music, and Nietzsche also understood that there could be other music during that period, such as Carmen, that had a Mediterranean strain that would be very, very attractive and very, very beautiful. But getting back to Horowitz, he was an unfulfilled man. He was someone that wanted very much to be able to be attracted to all the men that he had wanted, and that was just not allowed with Mrs. Horowitz. I had said to myself, gee, I wish I was homosexual. I would go out and pimp for him or something, because he would look longingly at and everyone knew this and understood it, and had always understood it for 50 years. One day he got up and he was a father somehow, but that happens to many men.
Mm-hmm.
Horowitz was not that fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
My book I thought was fascinating because it portrays on a novelistic sense the way I would move towards the finale and end it on my own terms, not on his.
Right. Well, that's why I think it makes it a remarkable book and a study for what you seem to be so well prepared to do from the start, which is not to put someone else's head above your own. So,
Liszt never put his head,
Well,
Wagner's
yes.
head above his
so
own.
we always have to come back to Liszt. He
Always,
did not
Liszt is
do
the
that.
greatest person of the time.
Yes.
And he will never do what you expect. He will never kowtow or lick Wagner's ass or anything else. There are many, many things that he would do for him because of the artist in him.
Yeah.
And he would premiere, Lohengrin and so forth. And Wagner said, I'm the only person in all of the Germanys that never has actually heard Lohengrin. So, Liszt did that in Weimar for him, and Liszt did many other things for him. And Liszt gave him a daughter. Well, come on, isn't this the most Freudian crazy thing you've ever heard? That Franz Liszt daughter, who looks exactly like him except an uglier version.
Okay.
Cosima is an uglier version of Franz Liszt, and he wants to give this woman, if necessary, take some away from the man he really does adore and who's worked so hard for him, Hans von Bülow. And it's a big scandal, and Wagner is now part of the world with which he had wanted to have her. What did he want there? Isn't this an amazingly Freudian thing that Wagner is only 2 years younger
Yes.
than is his father-in-law?
Yes.
Oh, come now. This is a psychosexual thing. Wagner is in love with Liszt.
Okay.
All people were. They
Yes.
had no possibility of escaping.
Mhm.
And he was never going to torment anyone because they were in love with him, nor a woman such as Eva Marie Dagout, and the craziest woman of all time, the Princess Wittgenstein. He was, he was so kind.
How do we account for Bülow then? That is almost
An ugly
beyond
little
belief.
man who had a dry talent, a wonderful intellect, a snappy intelligence, a part of him was a real Prussian martinet. You would not have wanted to know von Bülow. Maybe Alan Walker, whose biography he wrote, who says that this is his best work in biography.
Yes.
I read it once and I haven't gone back to it. I would like to. Von Bülow is a great artist, but he's not a creator. He writes music as everyone did, and he had a few things performed here and there. But there must have been something greatly lacking in his piano playing compared, let's say, to the juice, to the red blood of his rival Anton Rubinstein, born the same
Okay.
year.
What makes you say that?
Because Rubinstein was a juicy artist. He was not careful or pedantic.
Okay.
He's not really interested in writing an opinion that counts, or an edition of a Beethoven sonatas or anything like that, or other editions. He's not a pedant. You don't see the edition by Rubinstein Anton of a Beethoven sonatas or anything else. He's a composer. He's facile. He's a melody maker, and once again, Liszt puts it right exactly on. He's fishes in the water of Mendelssohn to the point where he just can't get out of that diatonic Mendelssohnian harmonic world.
Rubinstein's
Yeah, Rubinstein.
vocabulary,
Everything is ruined by Rubinstein's dull harmony. Great melody maker, great writer for the piano itself, wonderful orchestrator in the Ocean Symphony. A man probably, he's so prolific, he wrote like 12 biblical operas. I don't know where he got the time. Comes to America,
Yes.
Gives 215 concerts in 231 days.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
He changed the American world with one concertour. Nobody had ever heard Carnival or Kreisleriana or anything like that. He was a magnificent branch of the Lisztian energy. And I think just like I was talking about Berg and Schoenberg, Webern as being a part of the compositional world of Schoenberg, I think that everyone is a branch of Franz Liszt. If Franz Liszt looks at the Grieg piano concerto, that Grieg says, "Oh, I cannot play it," and Liszt says, "Oh, well, I will show you I cannot either," and sits down and he plays it perfectly.
Yes.
Well, what is this all about? It means that that's the composer, at least of the muscular system, that produced the Grieg concerto, the Rubinstein concertos,
Yes.
the Tchaikovsky concerto. They're all composed by Liszt. Now, these are fantastic ideas for these people. I hope they're going to subscribe.
I hope so too. Now, here's the question I have. If I'm sure that Liszt would recognize the traits of the pedant that you attribute to Bülow,
Oh, Bülow is such a pedant, he'd scare me.
why do we think that Liszt then would entrust von Bülow with something as remarkable as the premiere as the piano sonata in B minor? Why would he be the exponent to bring it to the world?
Everything has its reason behind it. You just dig a little. Liszt wanted never to associate himself totally with a piano builder. He would get pianos all over the place for free. And now coming up is a Bechstein for the first time in history. And he wants to give publicity to this guy. Feels very bad that the daughter, this is a daughter far more than a daughter. This man really, he's so deeply hurt by everything about Cosima, from her anti-Semitism onward.
Okay.
And he wants so much for her to eradicate some of these spots in her personality, and she never does. She always disappoints Franz Liszt. Think of where he's buried. Isn't it a sickening to think that the great Hungarian master is in a little lesser grave there in Bayreuth than Wagner. Wagner is the king of Bayreuth, and Liszt, his son-in-law. Come on, the man who he must have fallen in love with instantly in 1840 when he first met him. But what were we just saying? Because it was.
Well, I was just wondering, and you mentioned several strands that I'd like to hear you weave about Bechstein.
Yeah,
and
the
Premier.
Bechstein firm is coming out. Karl is known in Berlin, and Berlin is a big city for Liszt's music through von Bülow. And remember, von Bülow is an amazing musician. He becomes the #1 conductor in the world. I don't think Richard Strauss had anything over him, who was younger. I think that he really was the beginning of the birth of the modern disciplined orchestra. We had talked about them standing up and so forth.
Oh yes.
So but he never gives up on one thing. Von Bülow is always the pianist before he's the conductor. So he's a pianist. What is a pianist? As a pianist, just plays other people's musics. Now we have a whole huge literature that is begotten mostly because of Liszt's extraordinary world career. Everyone is playing the piano in the world, and he's possibly trying to show his fairness, and that the Bechstein may well be the next great piano. And so he says to von Bülow, oh, your schedule is in Berlin, and maybe you'd like to play my sonata. Well, come on, what is this idea of he takes 2 years to prepare it? Alan Walker talks about that. I think that he takes 5 weeks or 5 minutes to prepare it.
Do you mean
Brahms sight read the Liszt sonata to Clara?
Okay. Do we think Brahms really could give that good of an account of the B minor sonata?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
At sight.
Oh, Brahms is a major genius.
Okay. Well, that I don't in any way dispute. I just don't know the lore about
the
his sight
facilities were way beyond anything that we have in the world today.
Okay.
Liszt sight reading Islam is an impossibility.
Right.
But
So-
it tells you again. Goes. He's the composer of Islam. It's nothing strange about it.
I understand what you mean. That it's a kind of he's obliquely the composer of everything that follows
Yes,
him.
everything.
Yes.
Certainly, all of Debussy's music is honed from the hand of Jadot.
The Villa d'Este.
Yeah, the last great piece, the Impressionist piece. It was even honed by as early as Au Bois du Source, in 1839, 1838. Everything is Liszt when it comes to the future of the piano. All of Saint-Saëns piano concertos, all of his music. Just one look at it, it's just Liszt.
Yes. So, if I understood you correctly, you feel that the sonata was premiered by Bülow because it had a convenience in terms of Liszt balancing the people who were connecting themselves to his name in terms of piano firms. And it was something that he could yield to the Bechstein firm, that if that piano was used at a certain...
Because it was going to be the next great 9-foot piano, you see. So it was, and if you tried to listen on the Bechstein, as I have done,
Okay.
you could kill it. The piano doesn't hold up. That 1857 piano is too skimpy in its building.
In its bass, in the bass parts? You mean?
I just happened to play on one of that period. I don't know. He did a lot of work called him the great piano builder of that time, and when he comes to America, though, he changes his mind very quickly, and because he's going to really play a heavier and more volatile piano called the Chickering.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's very happy to say, the Chickering is making me a first-rate pianist.
Okay.
It's a very interesting statement because a great piano, as Horowitz knew, makes the great artist. I mean,
Now, who was that? Who that said that of the Chickering?
Von Bülow said
Von
the
Bülow.
Chickering is
During
making
his-
me a first-rate pianist.
When he was
yes.
playing here.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Now, if I may go back to something that really fascinates me. So, David, you were already prepared, you say, with the notion of not putting another person's head above your own before meeting Horowitz.
It's a disaster in anyone's world.
Mm-hmm. So, how did you come to that? From your own self-reliant self-conception?
Willard Beecher,
Okay.
the greatest psychologist I've ever known, and student of Alfred Adler, and a man who taught me how to play the piano. He didn't play. He didn't even think about it. He couldn't care less. But he did teach me the piano better than anyone else because these piano teachers actually taught nothing. It's a very fraudulent profession, believe me.
I think I know what you mean. Would you expound on it a bit more?
Well, I mean, anyone can, put a new fingering down there and
Right.
say, this is the seventh finger, use the seventh finger.
Yes. Okay.
Horowitz would say, I'm going to use my nose today, my sixth finger.
Okay. So you feel that that's something you came into as an adult, but it wasn't.
I made my living out of piano teaching. I consider that I really know how to teach the piano compared
Mm-hmm. Well, I meant.
to the teachers that I myself have had.
Well, I meant first of all the idea of resisting the elevation of someone else above one's own.
Oh, it's so simple. That's how people get their reputation. Just take a look at the history of all the piano teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Liszt refused to have his head put above anyone else. He was there giving those master classes,
Mm-hmm.
which were very new. He knew that he was Franz Liszt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not going to say, you're all better than me.
Mm-hmm.
That had nothing to do with that. But he's not going to ever disrespect a student, and never did. There's no examples of his disrespecting a student.
I agree. So here's a subtle thing that in reading the Liszt lore always fascinates me, which is the idea that when we practice that kind of uber humility that Liszt can achieve, if I see it practiced by a lesser person, it looks somehow cloying sometimes or affected. But when I read it in the Liszt lore, it always seems so well balanced and right, meaning that he can affect great humility, yet he never surrenders authority when he does it. And I'm wondering how he does that.
Everything that you're just saying, it's everything in Liszt's personality.
Yes.
He never surrenders authority.
And yet he does it with exquisite courtesy that does not seem like condescension. He
Yes.
seems to really mean the
How
courtesy.
did he do that all
That I
the
don't know.
time?
Mm-hmm.
Even Horowitz felt that he, understood that he did that all the time too. When we were talking about Toscanini
Yes.
and so forth, he you can't call it humility. It's almost another category of life.
Mm-hmm.
He's the greatest man
Mm-hmm.
that we have had in music. There's just nothing to compare with Franz Liszt.
Agreed.
And you don't have to like his music. It would be better if you did, because boy, is that a group of work of art that just so deeply touches you in so many ways. If you only knew it,
Mm-hmm.
we just hear those same few pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking last time, some of those same few pieces, like the great first concerto, I mean, it never ceases to be a masterpiece because it's so perfectly made.
Yes, it is.
The Liszt Sonata is the greatest. Well, Arau is right, the 33rd Beethoven sonata.
Mm-hmm.
Except Arau is wrong in the sense that it is all Listy and there's no Beethoven in it, except that Beethoven permeates that tremendous space in life where the sonata form lives. And he didn't finish his work, Beethoven. He needed to write a one-movement sonata.
That's interesting because I've always wondered that. what do you feel in late Beethoven's piano writing is premonitory of the Liszt Sonata? I don't know that I really see that.
Oh, I think that the Opus 111, great music that it is, wonderful, wonderful first movement, which heralds back to
Yes.
earlier music,
Mhm.
and then the second movement, the Variations, which is a greater piece of music. I think that he knew what he was doing by stopping, but he didn't know what he was doing by not going on to the 33rd Sonata and making it into the one movement form, which was becoming an inevitable thing in his work. Within 2 or 3 years, when he was composing the Missa Solemnis and other music of the latest works, he would have definitely written a one movement work.
Now, do you think he was getting closer to that early on and then abandoned that idea? Like take the E flat from Opus 27. That seems to start to hint at
Oh,
that.
you mean the E flat is an amazing work?
Yes.
It's as great as any sonata. Yes, in the formal
Agreed.
structure.
And then there certainly is that cyclical allusion right before the coda to the slow movement, if I'm remembering rightly.
Oh,
And-
yes.
And that seems more of a prescient guess toward the Liszt Sonata than, to me, the late Beethoven sonatas.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yet everybody seems to say that, or at least,
Merely convention.
okay,
It's
all
the
right.
last piece. What are you going to do?
Okay.
You know, did they really know he's going to go on and write music of the spheres,
Mhm.
or the overture, to the
Mhm.
Missa Solemnis, where where Huxley is saying, it's outside the realm of what we know, or there's a suchness to it that's so extraordinary.
Well, if he does not go on to do what Liszt does, which was, in a sense, this ultimate gesture of unifying the sonatas multiform movement into one cohesive cosmos, how do you still take the idea of the last sonata, let's say, of Beethoven, and just from a very almost childlike point of view, reconcile the two movements? Why are they paired? Why do they belong to each other?
And there's nothing in common.
So that's my question. I still, for as much as I study piano music, sometimes I'll sit back and hope no one asks me why they're both part of one piece, because I don't have an answer.
There is no answer to give.
Mm-hmm.
He just wrote two pieces and he called it sonata. Now we're blaspheming the 111, which is
Right.
all you have to do is read Dr. Faustus by Mann, and you hear the piano lesson that Kretschmeier or whatever is giving, and on and on. Probably the better way of thinking of it is Tentner, who says no pianist can play both movements.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to, he said, one pianist can play the first movement wonderfully, and another pianist can play the second movement wonderfully. Well, not too many of them,
Mm-hmm.
but anyone can play the first movement of the 111. It's a very simple,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go beyond the pathétique.
Mhm.
In fact, it's organically less interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think?
I think so. Well, that's what it always mystifies me.
But we're mystified by the great stuff written about music.
Yes.
It's Beethoven's last, it's like a movie.
Mhm.
Here it is, get ready, Beethoven's last sonata. It's gotta be really great. Well, of course, the last movement is great, but not the first movement. It's just a wonderful roar, it's a wonderful tiger, it's a wonderful,
I guess
Snap.
I just love the Liszt Sonata so much that I'm desperate in a kind of evolutionary way, like many people, looking for the hints, the sparks on the horizon, the lightning bolts that would explain from whence it comes. And I went through that cycle of course, of hoping to find a lot of that coming out of the Wanderer fantasy. And it does, but even that doesn't really quite answer it.
No, Wonder Fantasy's just a simple Viennese pop work.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, you don't...
Tunes.
It is, but you don't think the unification there is pretty severe, that the four movements...
No, I think the unification is excellent
Yeah,
and simplistic.
I guess in a way it is.
What does Schubert want? Does he want to go and do it again?
Oh, you mean, does he ever try that
No,
experiment
he
again?
doesn't try it again. He writes well, what's so great about the B flat sonata? Certainly because it's the last and it's so long, and you could go out of your mind sitting through that piece.
Well, how did you segue to the B flat, the Opus Posthumous?
Oh, because we're talking about the Wander Fantasy,
Okay.
and then
Mhm.
the late sonatas of Schubert. Schubert's great of the three is the middle is the C minor.
Okay.
And there without any problem, he goes right back into Beethoven's land and he writes a great Beethoven sonata.
The C minor Opus Posthumous?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The A major has many things in it that are beautiful. And the B flat, of course, has a heavenly opening, Schubertian melody. And it's just too long. And the last two of the four movements they're very wonderful little nature studies, but certainly nothing.
Well, they seem light compared to the two previous
It's the
ones.
last. He's dead. The poor guy's
Yeah.
dead. He's never going to. It's all
Yes.
a game.
Yeah,
It's a game.
it is.
And ladies and gentlemen, Schubert is dying of syphilis and whatever else, what is it? Besides syphilis, he's dying of the fever, typhoid fever.
Okay.
And he's in bad shape, and he's still writing these. Now Horowitz is sitting there with a tear in front of me, saying, and I don't condemn him his tear. I would have that same tear too. What is he composing it for? He's so sick.
Mm.
That's what a normal human being would do. And and Schubert is at home dying with these diseases, and he's composing the quintet, the last sonatas, and other music, and then he dies.
So you were saying that that's what a normal human being would do? Be able to do?
No,
what
he's totally abnormal. But
Oh, right.
the normal human being would be doing what Horowitz would think. Why are you doing
Oh,
this?
yes.
So I answer, Maestro, he's doing it for us. What other answer could I give? And that satisfied him, of course, because he was working on the piece at that time. There's always an underlying theme.
So you think Schubert had a faith that the work was of such strength that would have a canonical lifespan?
No.
So then what was, if he's doing it for us, what certainty did he have?
Well, it became doing it for us, I think.
Oh, I see.
I don't
Okay.
think that
Mhm.
I don't think he would be happy to know that in 1837, when it was published, that a dedication was to Hummel.
Okay.
Why would he want,
Mhm.
a piece dedicated to someone that he didn't even know?
And who made that dedication for him?
Publisher.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
I don't know. These are tremendously interesting psychological,
They are.
and not simple things. And I'm
Well, then, to come full circle in our conversation today, and we came to it inadvertently, Schubert, in his last works, is certainly not writing for the sake of commerce. And we started in the beginning,
Well, he never wrote for commerce.
right,
That's, yeah.
and Wagner, in a sense,
That's why he died so poor.
is at the opposite pole. And it is remarkable that I would imagine if one put both things in a time capsule, that the Schubert would have a greater chance of survival.
All Schubert has a greater chance of
Yeah.
survival. All the string quartets, all the
Mhm.
piano sonatas. We don't know the operas. I bet there's so many wonderful gems of melody in them. There's
Mhm.
12 operas or something. Liszt himself, put on Alfredo and Estrella.
Okay.
In Weimar. I'd love to hear that, in a performance. But come on, the quintet. What is there anything that Wagner could write compared to the quintet or
Mhm.
other chamber music? The A minor, the Death and the Maiden,
Mhm.
and now let's go to the real thing. Where did Wagner ever get 600 melodies of the quality of
Mm.
of the songs, which are among the masterpieces of the human voice?
Mm.
Would we give up the Wagnerian opera world, music drama world, to save the soul and and songs of Schubert? You bet we would.
Mm.
What are we going to do without the
Mhm.
without him? You don't have Schubert. You don't have with Schumann. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
Mendelssohn's marvelous songs. Weber.
Mhm.
You don't have the great songs of Brahms, and on until you have works that are greater than Wagner in the Wolf songs.
Mm. Mhm.
So there's your evolution from Schubert on as a,
Mhm.
just even in the sense of the evolvement of the lead. Am I going overboard? I don't know.
No, I just think it's an interesting question. It makes me now think for the forthcoming week, I'll be thinking in terms of commerce versus cosmic impulse in terms of the faith of the workmen when they are creating their work. And yet,
Oh, this is a big time spirit, this Mr. Schubert.
yes.
He gets up every morning, he's got his two tables, he stands up. He doesn't sit like we do, and he's writing away from a source that he himself must have considered some spiritual manifestation.
Well, then it leads to the idea, and it's funny because here we are in the United States where we think of ourselves so much as a nation of commerce that perhaps one of our ultimate composers had to split himself in two because his faith in that was so great that commerce couldn't be part of one's art. So that Ives had to have something in which he worked where I think that in part of the lore is that a lot of people with whom he worked didn't know that he had another identity as a composer.
No, of course they didn't know. Yes, well, even into the world of the popster, Gershwin.
Mm.
He's trying to have a split life. He's trying to write serious music, a serious opera, as well as the Tin Pan Alley works.
Now, do you think that's because he inherently felt, to some degree, the abstract idea we're talking about in terms of the harmful invasion of the motivation of commerce? Or do you think he just felt that he had to have his hand in a kind of snob's pedigree? Because aren't those songs that he wrote, some of them even for the most popular of popular stage shows, really lasting and almost as strong as Schubert songs in certain ways?
Yes.
So how do we reconcile that?
I don't don't reconcile it. Gershwin has nothing to do with commerce. He just happened to make money.
Well, it's that, okay.
He's trying very hard. He's a
Yeah.
young man to continue the road of being a great composer, writing another Cuban overture. And,
Right.
It's certainly better than Copland's work.
Mm.
Copland just split it up. It all opened up for him by Gershwin. Copland just decided, well, okay, I can do ballet, I can do. And well, of course, he was right because Copland was always a good earner.
Mm.
He took the new society and used it very well in the sense of the framework of the money coming in from the organizations which commissioned them.
So, But we would imagine when you say he was a good earner, Copland, you mean from the mechanism that
The mechanism of the
of the
society.
20th century with in terms of grants and things like that?
Grants and this and that. Gershwin has nothing to do with it. He's just a hard-working man. He begins with with wanting to be a great artist like Chopin. His first piano teacher instills all of that in him, and he's nothing to do with a man of commerce. He didn't care that he earned $250,000 that someone else earned nothing, or
Well, how do we account for such high artfulness becoming united with commerce in a Gershwin? Because he certainly didn't have the production level.
Oh, his genius is much higher than all of the small time composers. Remember, Ives is not a composer anymore in the 1920s. So that's over with. Ives is very highbrow. Gershwin is happy to be an artist within the scope of his Rhapsody number 1 and 2, his piano concerto. He's a late romantic.
Now, we've had a lot of conversations in talking about.
Do you agree with any of this?
Oh, absolutely. And so I'm going to then add one little trope to this. We often explore the idea of how, in the best sense, no art can really give its best if it's yoked to one of the other arts.
Yeah.
And yet, Gershwin was certainly yoked to words as a popular songwriter,
Mhm.
songs that are so artful that they seem to survive, we might even argue, the very tacky elements in which they had to be first produced. How do you account for cases like that, where someone like a Gershwin can not only write in a popular idiom and yet leave something of canonical art quality, but also have it yoked to something that would perhaps give it an association that over time would make it descend, as you say, with Bayreuth and all of this extra.
Wagnerian
Impediments.
crap is ridiculous.
Well, that's what I mean. That the old Broadway show elements that are surrounding these songs don't seem to cause the ship of Gershwin to sink.
America's it was a fun nation at that time, comparatively speaking.
Yes.
You see, I
Mhm.
mean, he was having a good time writing those shows. Those shows should have premieres every year. They're better than all the stuff that's done
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Why aren't we hearing all of the Gershwin stuff brought back, revived?
Don't
They're
know.
better than all of the
Mhm.
stuff being made. But he was having a good time. He's a young man. He's living the New York life.
Mhm.
He's not. Nobody's anti-Semitic to him.
Mhm.
He's grateful that Tin Pan Alley exists because he gets a chance to do things. And now, slowly but surely, he has bigger thoughts. And it's a big difference between, the first song,
Mhm.
whatever that was. I remember the name of it. What was the name of the first song? And remember, there's always
The first song of
undercurrents.
Gershwin, isn't it something like the real American folk song is a rag? Is it
I
that
don't
the name of the
remember.
song?
I don't remember, darn it.
Okay.
But whatever it is, he's happy. He loves the facility that
Mm.
God gave him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's writing away. He's got a brother that's a wordsmith.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't have the brother, he would just write more piano preludes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why three? Why didn't he give us a piano sonata or another piano concerto? Well, he was too young, and he was.
Mhm.
It was too hard. The work was too hard compared to the facileness of writing another great popular song.
Okay.
But those popular songs are the greatest things in American. One of the great things in American music.
They are.
Doesn't have to be called
Mhm.
popular music.
No, it doesn't.
That's
Well-
another one of our things with this category of things.
Yes,
Those songs are Schubert songs.
they certainly are.
Way above Beatles, my friend. That's
A topic
it.
that I think maybe we should reserve for a whole conversation,
Oh
because I
my
agree with you
God, please
that
save
maybe
me,
we
save
should
me.
address the inexplicably canonized later popular music.
It's another publicity stunt that
Yes.
has worked beyond belief.
Mhm.
Never underestimate the publicity stunt. So you have two pianists playing in the world today. They're both, I call them the commerce pianists.
Mm.
I don't want to name them because they work hard like all pianists.
Mhm.
But it's all based on the commerce that was behind them,
Mm.
and they were able to pull it off.
Mhm.
Horowitz was able to pull it off when he came here. Came the right time.
Mhm.
Rachmaninoff all of a sudden is lesser than Horowitz. Come on,
Mhm.
he's
Mhm.
never lesser than Horowitz.
Mhm. Well,
These are very, very, I think, important ideas to press upon a public which is naive always. They will always remain naive. They will only care about what they're reading.
Well, if you're willing, David, I certainly am. In a future conversation, perhaps we should take the risk of attacking the Sacred Cows post Tin Pan Alley that have, as you say, been elevated only by the stunt of
Fantastic.
press agents or
It's
whatever. I don't know
fantastic.
how it's been done and what gives them their staying power, except the perpetuation of that same machine. So I think we should maybe have that as a whole other conversation, because I could feel myself beginning a
I
2 hour.
know, Horowitz would look at me and say, could you imagine me having a press agent?
Oh, yes.
See, I mean,
Yeah.
well, he lived the life of a press agent, you see, because he didn't understand that he comes to fame through the amazing press agentry of Toscanini.
Mm-hmm.
I think we said a lot today,
Yes.
and I think we opened up maybe a mind or two in our
Agreed.
game, and that it was so much fun talking on these subjects, and certainly we did Wagner in that he surely is a monster today.
Oh, David, it's a pleasure and an honor. I enjoyed every moment.
I enjoyed it so
Okay.
much, Jack.
Thank you, David. So until next week.
Until next week,
Okay.
please subscribe, please tell us what you think, and have faith in us.
Okay. Thank you
don't
so
have
much.
to agree.
Exactly. Okay. Till next time.